Hi, this is Matt, and welcome to the School of Fiction channel. And I have with me today Dan Klefstad, who is a book marketing professional. And Dan, you've offered to give new writers and me, because I need it too, advice about how to sell books without a lot of advertising costs. So you told me you had a successful campaign for your novel. So tell us about the novel and give us an overview of your campaign strategy.
Yeah, the thumbnail description of my vampire novel is it's called Fiona's Guardians. It's about humans who work for a beautiful, powerful vampire named Fiona. The book was adapted, and I can give you a little more about that later on because I do offer an alternate way for authors to get their books adapted.
Mhm. No, definitely, I want to find out as much as I can about that. So give us an overview of your campaign strategy.
So focus on very practical things, and it's really only about four or five things that I strongly emphasize. One, it is extremely important to get one really good review from a very respectable source, and I can get into what that respectable source means in just a moment here. But once you have that review, that becomes your calling card when you approach independent bookstores, for example, because you can't just go up to your local independent bookstore or a bookstore, across the country, when you email a pitch them and say, "Look at all these Amazon reviews I've got." I think for it's obvious why you wouldn't want to do that to an independent bookstore who believes that Amazon is out to crush them. So once you get that really good review from a really good, respectable source, then you include a link to that in pitch emails to independent bookstores, to the people who organize book festivals and author cons, to podcast hosts like Matt right here, or traditional media in your town or in your state, and of course, basically send that review, include a link to that review to anybody you communicate about your book.
Now, I missed out this opportunity because back during what I call the indie author bubble, which is the time when Amazon was promoting us, because I got three different books, one of mine and two anthologies reviewed by Pierce Anthony, the
Hmm.
fantasy writer from the 80s. I mean, I'm not saying I didn't use it in promotional materials. I did, but it wasn't not to approach indie bookstores. So I missed that opportunity, and I'm glad to learn about this now. And so I'm sure you're going to tell us a lot more about getting the type of reviewers that we want.
So, but what do I mean by respectable review? Certainly, if you wrote a genre novel, whether it's science fiction, fantasy, horror, etc., find one of those bloggers who has been around for a long time, has been reviewing for a long time, and pitch them. It's really important that you start with folks like these because they have read everybody who came before you, or nearly everybody, and so their reviews will have gravitas. And even if they don't give you a 5-star review, a 4-star review from one of these bloggers is a really good, recommendation from them. There is another, thing I like to talk about is: does your writers association or guild have a core of reviewers? And here I'm going to bring up the Chicago Writers Association, which has a publication called Windy City Reviews. They open up for review submissions 3 times a year. The next window begins May 1st. You don't have to be a member of the CWA to get reviewed, but it helps a lot. And a membership is only $25 a year, and you get an enormous amount of resources. So I would encourage you to do that. And then once you get a review from Windy City Reviews, and it's a good one, that is another link you will want to share. I got a review for my novel Fiona's Guardians from Windy City Reviews, and it is not the only one I've gotten that's outside of Amazon, but it is certainly the one I cherish the most, and I send it out to everybody I talked about earlier. Booksellers, book festival people, media, etc. So that is the review I
Being
want to.
an example of an organization, because I'm not in Chicago myself. Maybe you are.
Uh-huh. But you could, if you wanted to, be a member if you want. I mean, they have, members everywhere. But
I
that is
would say,
one.
yeah, you told me you have 30 years of experience in the radio industry, and I think I'm hearing a radio voice right now.
These pipes did keep me employed for
Yeah.
30 years straight until I
What
retired.
were you doing in the radio industry?
I was the morning edition host for the NPR station in Northern Illinois and Southern Wisconsin, WNIJ, and I had an author interview program on that station for quite a few years. So I recognize what a good pitch is when it comes in. Like you, I've developed a skill for interviewing authors, and that's become a big part of my background. So with radio, I learned how to pitch media outlets for interviews and perform well in front of the mic. And this is one of the things I emphasize during, in my book, also in my PowerPoint presentations.
Let's look at some of your online resources. So this is the first of the 4 you sent me, DIY book promo. So tell us about this one. Of course, it is DIYbookpromo.com. Tell us about it, Dan.
I couldn't believe that URL was available when I released this book and started actually speaking about how to promote your book without spending money. My most recent presentations have been at the Imaginarium convention, Killer Nashville. I speak to writers groups all over the country. And so, yes, I emphasize not only in the book, but also in the PowerPoint, some of the things that I described for you just a moment ago. How to pitch media. Of course, you've got to have that review. And then the most important thing that I talk about is co-branding with independent bookstores. I know some authors have had difficult experiences with their local indie bookstore, but I would suggest that you go back to them with a really good review that is not an Amazon review, and try to convince them that to not only stock your book, but also to invite you for an author event. Solo or multi-author, it doesn't matter. Once you get into the bookstores, now you get pictures. And then share those photos online. It's really important to do that. So, you brought up a couple of them right here. We have various booksellers, one in Dixon, Illinois, one in Rockford, Illinois, one in Burlington, Iowa there, who gave me really nice photos of them either smiling or looking terrified because they're reading a vampire novel. And those get excellent engagement on Facebook and Instagram. I also share them on LinkedIn.
If the cats are reading it, then we don't need any other recommendation. That'll do.
See, so there's a bookseller in Wellsboro, Pennsylvania. Kevin is his name, and his store is From My Shelf Books and Gifts. And that is Huck and Finn, the feline booksellers there. As good engagement as I got with the humans, the smiling humans, you put these kitties, on Facebook or Instagram, and your feed will blow up. I mean, it's just, people will just react. And this, Matt, this is how people find out about my books.
Mm-hmm. I had a video when I was first launching in 2011 in which I had a printout of my book cover because the book wasn't physically available yet. And I went around the school and my neighborhood, and I had people take pictures smiling and holding up the picture of the book cover.
Yeah, that's also been a good break.
I mean, obviously, the trouble with book trailers is people don't want to click through on them. So the book trailer was kind of fun, but didn't quite do the thing. So what I'm learning from you about the way to make it really count, which is independent bookstores, and that was the thing that I didn't know about at the time. Is there anything else we should click on?
Just let me stick with independent bookstores for just a second here. Why are they so important? They are more likely to invite you, local authors, to events. They are more likely to stock books by local or regional authors if you're nice to them and if you walk in and buy a book from them. That's a nice way to get on their good side. And then, of course, share that all-important review that I mentioned earlier. But the other thing, in addition to getting the photos, it's important that you tag them on social media when you share photos like that so they know you're doing your part. I've always believed that independent booksellers and independent authors are natural partners, and we each need to do our part to further our own goals. And so the other important thing to remember is booksellers are authorities. People look to them for reading recommendations. So you want to be on their good side. And if they like your book, they will shout it from the rooftops and of course, tell their customers, oh, you like science fiction. I've got a book for you here from a local author, or horror, romance, whatever. So you need them on your side. And of course, they need authors on their side as well.
Here we have, this is an article, I guess, by a associate of yours.
Oh, right. Somebody I met at WNIJ when I was just approaching retirement. Yep. So Nia Springer Norris is a contributing writer for Success Magazine. It's always important to get into the media. It increases your searchability, but it also elevates your platform, even if it's your local newspaper. That's important. But if you are able to get into a national, or I guess international publication like Success Magazine, that is a big help as well. It is to a certain extent about who you know, about who you meet, but it is also more important about the pitch letters you send to these organizations. Again, keep it short and punchy. Your email, get right to the point. If your book has a particular season, like when I wrote a vampire novel, obviously October is my season. That is a good hook, a news hook for an editor at a newspaper or a podcast host or a producer of a TV or radio program. But you need to pitch them 2 months in advance and tell them, I've got a book that fits in with the either Valentine's Day or Halloween. Maybe your book fits in with a national celebration like Pride Month or Juneteenth or Veterans Day or St. Patrick's Day. That is another important news hook that you can use in your pitch that arrives in their inbox 2 months before that date begins. And also, you can get a second news hook when you get scheduled at your local bookstore or library, at a time around those national celebrations or seasons we just talked about. That becomes a second news hook, which will interest. Does it guarantee that you're going to get an interview? It doesn't, but it increases your chances. And I make a strong point of emphasizing you get out there and try to get as many interviews as you can. Like this one here, I do appreciate Matt. You giving me the time to share what I know with your viewers.
Marketing is not my specialty at all. It's one of the major obstacles that I had as an independent author is that. So I want new writers coming up to get as many ideas as they can. And
Mm-hmm.
this is really more for new writers, but I'm learning at the same time. I do want, however, to kind of qualify what you were just talking about the seasonal aspect, because what I find is that the market is super saturated with every season, every holiday. Say in Halloween, there's going to be tens of thousands of new scary books, and so that has always struck me as something of an obstacle because people are jaded and they're a little tired of it, and like, oh, it's Halloween, I'm going to see all this stuff. What is the antidote to this thing? How is the way that you break through it, and is there any way to counter program?
Just showing up and being next to a famous author of horror. So for example, Harvey's Tales in Geneva, Illinois sent me a photo of my book on their Halloween table. They had all set up, and my vampire novel, was right next to the latest novel by Joe Hill, and there was Silence of the Lambs on the other side, and over here you've got Dracula. So it actually worked really well because I was able to take that photo and say, look at the company my novel is keeping, and share that on social media. And if you do something similar, then your fans will rally around you and say, whoa, right next to Joe Hill, that's really cool. It is something very important to share, but you got to think outside the box sometimes. And don't be afraid of your book being lost among all the other horror novels or whatever genre you're writing in. You can take advantage of that if you just think a little bit about it and know how to use the photos that either are provided to you by the bookstores or that you get yourself from them.
But we're not talking about online advertising as much, right?
Well, what I've just described is something that you would share on Facebook or Instagram or with your newsletter subscribers. So yes, online there, but I do not pay for Facebook boosts. I do not pay for advertising of any kind. It's
they
really
don't work. They don't work.
I'm just thinking of all the authors out there who are listening right now who have a book coming out, and they've paid for a professional edit, which costs well over $1,000. They've paid for really good cover art that'll stand out in an online listing or at their local bookstore. They probably don't have a lot of money left for a marketing campaign. So the stuff I'm sharing with you here and in my book, DIY Book Promo, these are practical things that you can implement today to create awareness about your book.
I like networking. I like marketing. I just uploaded yesterday an interview from Beth Barani, who's an expert in that.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
Have you met her? You know her?
I have not met her, but I'm aware of her, and I think that she also does a great job of providing. I think it's a mind shift that we're all really talking about. Most authors work in isolation, and so we're not used to networking or promoting ourselves, and some of us are just uncomfortable with putting ourselves out there. I'm saying that if you want to make your publisher happy, it is extremely important that you do the marketing work. And if you are self-published, then it's also extremely important because you probably would like to see some return. You claw back some of the expenses that you've put up front for the aforementioned editing and cover art, etc. So, my advice can certainly help you claw back those costs, but also it's useful to remember that even if you're published by the big five, Simon & Schuster or Penguin Random House, if you're new to them, they're not going to give you a lot of money to publicize your book. The lion's share of their publicity budget is going to go to their already successful authors. So you're going to have to do the work yourself. And here's where I'm going to admit what is the most important lesson I've ever learned. I got dumped by a publisher. This is around 2018 before I published my vampire novel. And that was the most important lesson in my authoring career because I didn't know how to do the marketing. I didn't think that I had to put that much effort into it. And I expected them to do at least some of the marketing, which was, now I realize, the wrong approach. So everything that you've heard me talk about just during this interview is my response to being dumped by a publisher and taking that lesson, everything I've learned there, and realizing I have to do the work myself. I cannot depend on anybody else unless I'm rich and can afford a $3,000 or to $5,000 professional marketer for a campaign that may last 6 months. So it really is up to you.
There's a lot of people out there who claim to be professional marketers, but then they don't actually do anything. They just take your money. They make a social media post you could have done yourself. They claim they have a big network, but their network consists entirely of other authors who hire them for the same thing. And I'm very mistrustful of people like that, to be honest.
The important thing is
marketers, like, other than talking to you today.
Yeah, I understand why this marketing as a profession or a vocation has a bad reputation because of all the spam emails and messages that you get on Facebook from people who are approaching you for, pay me and I will market your book, or pay me and I'll edit your book, or pay me and I'll publish your book, all of that. So basically my advice to you is if somebody is approaching you offering a service, don't respond. Do your own research, find people who are reputable if you want to pay someone to market your book. But really, I'm here to convince you that you can, even if you devote just 1 hour a day, every day, you can successfully market your book. The only other thing I didn't talk about, Matt, is adaptation. You want me to mention a little bit about that?
Absolutely, yes. And also co-branding.
Okay, yeah. So I was able to get my vampire novel, Fiona's Guardians, adapted by an all-professional acting company in Illinois, Artists Ensemble Theater. I pitched them, and surprisingly, they were interested. This was during COVID, so all the theater companies had shut their doors because nobody was allowed to go to performances during that time. And the savvy theater companies started up and still continue these programs. They have podcasts, a theater of the mind podcasts. And so what the resident playwright of AET, Margaret Rather, did, she wrote a script. She took 4 or 5 chapters of my novel and made a complete 22, 25-minute episode that you can find anywhere, Podbean or Spotify. It's the Mysterious Journey series is what it's called, of podcast, performances. And each one of those episodes sounds like an old-fashioned radio play a little bit. It's got these 7 union actors reading their lines, and then it's got sound effects, music, etc., all weaved together very nicely. So Fiona's Guardians is from the first season, I believe, of Mysterious Journey, and you can find it, like I said, anywhere. And I'm biased because it's an adaptation of my novel, but it is a really good production. And I encourage you to pitch your local or regional theater companies. All you have to do is say, I've got a story, a collection of short stories, poems, or a memoir or a novel that I think might interest your audience. Would you consider adapting it? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I think it's a conversation that you really should start with the decision makers at these theater companies and see where it goes. They might stage it at some of these theater companies have small kind of experimental stages in the basement or whatever. Well, that's fine. If that would be a great accomplishment. But if they include you in a podcast, that is something you can share on social media or with your newsletter subscribers. So that's an extremely important tool in your toolkit as you're going out and promoting your book.
All right. So what is co-branding with indie bookstores? You mentioned that to me.
Yes, co-branding with indie bookstores. So that is, of course, you saw some of the photos earlier of smiling booksellers holding my book that I share on social media, and I tag them so that they know I'm doing my part. But there's another really important component. That is, are you aware of bookshop.org?
I think I just saw it on the links that you shared. That's all that I knew about it. So it's new to me. Tell me more.
Bookshop.org is a tool that allows you to shop online, but also support indie bookstores. Those participating bookstores, you get to name the bookstore that gets the profits when you buy a book on bookshop.org. And if you don't name an indie bookstore, then the profit goes into a pool that indie bookstores can use. And so if you tell your friends and followers, on social media or in your newsletter that your book is available on bookshop.org, that is an alternate path for people who enjoy the convenience of shopping online, but who don't maybe want to buy from Amazon or another online store, because I believe indie bookstores are like any independent business. These are pillars of our communities, and really important to our local economies. And the more you support them, more of your money will stay in the community than when you buy a book from a chain bookstore or Amazon. And then I encourage everybody to at least include a link. You can have a link to Amazon, of course, on your website, but include a link to bookshop.org, and that allows that portion of your readership that really wants to support their local indie bookstore.
Is it possible using that website just to find lists of indie bookstores so you can address them, write to them directly with other business?
Yeah, so I use a couple of different resources there. With bookshop.org, you can just type in a search the box, the bookstore that you want to support. I use, when I'm pitching bookstores, I use a separate resource called newpages.com. It is a site that has not only contests, but it has a list of every independent bookstore in the United States and Canada and U.S. territories. It's listed, alphabetically by state or Canadian province, and then within that state or province, alphabetically by city. I have pitched every bookstore in the U.S. and Canada, and most of those in the U.K.
Newpages.com?
Newpages.com, yeah.
Okay.
So I've sent thousands of emails over the last 3 or 4 years as following up every few months to all these bookstores. And that is how I was able to get my novel, Fiona's Guardians, into dozens of independent bookstores. I probably have a success rate of only 0.0001%, but I got photos. I have dozens of photos that I put up on my Pinterest page, of the kind that you saw some of there. Sometimes it's cats, sometimes it's smiling booksellers, whatever. And those I've been sharing on social media for a few years now. And again, that's how people find out about my book.
What are the fundamental strategies you use to locate and pitch book reviewers?
Okay. I am going to place an emphasis on those that do not charge a fee. Okay. So what I do is I place a high emphasis on those bloggers, those single genre bloggers that I talked about earlier. Also, Windy City Reviews, these are free services that offer prestige reviews. Their reviews have gravitas; they matter, and these are the ones I share. Also, if you have, there are these other bloggers that I like that I really kind of multi-genre amateur reviewers who start up their websites because they want to remember the books they've read and how they felt by them. These amateur book bloggers, multi-genre book bloggers, are well networked on social media. They are on TikTok. They are on Instagram and Pinterest, etc. And quite often, if they belong to a particular network that I'm thinking of, when a new review comes up, each reviewer in this network will share on their homepage that review and then push it out to their subscribers and then share out on social media. It is a very efficient way to get your book in front of a lot of people very quickly. Now, some of these reviewers that I've just mentioned, the amateur reviewers, do participate in blog tours where an author pays. Some of them are also paid publicists, but their free reviews are above reproach, and I would encourage you to pitch them for that.
Now, how does one locate these? Is it by word of mouth? Because when you Google them, you're not going to find the depth and variety that is necessary to do this type of strategy.
Few I could just give you right now. There's a book blogger out of County Cork, Ireland. Swirl and Thread is one. Mairead O'Hearn is the admin there. There's one in the UK that I like. A Little Book Problem. The admin there is Julie. Also in the UK, there's Chat About Books, run by a very nice lady named Carrie Parsons. Linda Hill has Linda's Book Bag, also in the UK. A lot of my favorite ones are in the UK. I would encourage you to take a look at their review policies. Some of them don't review, say, horror or erotica, so you kind of have to look at their genre preferences. Check out whether or not they're accepting reviews requests at that time, and then write a compelling pitch to them. Fiona's Guardians is doing very well. It has been getting excellent reviews. I mentioned that it did get adapted. So I am working on the sequel. Right now, I am over 50,000 words into it, but I think if I can finish that by May, my publisher could get the book out in time for October. But I'm not going to guarantee that that's going to happen, because something else has been happening in my authoring career that has kind of taken over a large portion of my mental bandwidth, and that is the Vamp Chat podcast. So I write about vampire fiction and some of the fanged folklore aspect, and I also do movie reviews. I have a co-host, Eva Vertrees, a fellow author of Vampire Tales, and I got together more than a year ago. We met at a joint book signing in Georgetown, Kentucky, Fabled Forest Books, and we decided, the minute we met, we knew we hit it off really well, and we wanted to co-host a show. And so I would encourage you, everybody who's listening to this right now, to think about building up your platform in another direction, because you need to get out there in as many places as possible to become known. And interestingly, I have had more TV and magazine interviews as a result of Vamp Chat than I have had with my own writing. So I would suggest you could do what you're doing, Matt, and have a show called The School of Fiction, which I on YouTube, etc. Or maybe you have a friend that you think you could really bounce off well with, and have a co-host. Think about that. Pick a subject that comports with your writing, and then go on Podbean, for example. That's where we're streaming right now. It's audio only, but it's becoming increasingly popular, and we've had some excellent guests. Dacre Stoker, for example, and an author who is very much has taken up the mantle of preserving and promoting his great grand uncle's Bram Stoker's legacy. We interviewed 3-time Oscar-winning makeup designer V. Neal. We interviewed PC Cast just a week ago, the YA phenom, whose books rather are being adapted into film starting this summer. So this is another way that you can get out there and find people, who may be interested in your books. So
Dan, so this has been a wonderful experience. I really enjoyed learning so much from you. That you gave me so many ideas, and I also gave me some really cool callbacks to things from my days when I inexpertly marketed. So it's wonderful. I enjoyed the radio voice, and I'm going to try to practice having a radio voice also now.
All right. You just have to be yourself. I think that's part of it. Just be yourself, be, like you are now. This is why you have the fans that you have, the people who come onto your show, and your subscribers, because you're being you and you're putting yourself out there. And I think that's a really cool thing you got going on, Matt, and long may it continue.
The School of Fiction.